retrieved public engagement in the budget process. You can see the method is primarily still public hearing and the meeting. And academic have a lot of articles showing that that's not effective. In a way, there's two things not effective. It's too late. Another thing is not well represented, right? And also, I think I have some kind of personal observation. I attended the open house, the budget open house last June. I'm glad to see a group of citizens there, but I do see kind of like very skewed age distribution among the audience, right? Because when we try to engage the public, we want to reach out not only more people, but all walks of life, right? So that's kind of a purpose. And so that's one thing. The second, we ask, what is the common barrier you think that, we keep talking about public engagement in the budget process, why it's still not very successful, right? The number one reason is lack of public interest, no surprise, okay? And further, we say, okay, if you ask you to kind of assess the importance of public engagement, 44% saying that it's, very important. And then, but you say, how well is the public engagement implemented? Then you see that pie shrink to 29%. I mean, academics like to show the statistical significance, but this difference is statistical different. So that leads to, we're thinking about, now the GFOA also they have a series of rethinking initiatives. So this one is related to the rethinking budgeting. So they're basically thinking about, if you're thinking about the budget process as preparation, approval, implementation, and evaluation, right? So we always say, okay, we should have the public engagement early. Then we always have the question, how early is early? The end of January, I was at the GFOA budgeting committee meeting at DC. We kind of discussed this topic. We're discussing about all the best practice. One question is imposed there is how early is early, right? And then also ask about the purpose of public engagement, right? It's really you let them to make the decision or help you make the decision, or you get the input. There's definitely different levels of engagement, and definitely there's a different level of feedback you can get from the citizen. One thing is that it's the best early is really to link with the strategic planning. And I know the county now is conducting a new round of strategic planning. So, I think Tom also said, we start with this first year, and then, when we have the strategic planning ready, and once we have this project moving on, we can better marry those two things. So that being said, so this is kind of, then remember the number one barrier is the lack of public interest, right? So there's numerous efforts to try to boost the interest. One thing we come across is this balancing act. They have a budget simulation tool. So this one is perfect. You can see that's a snapshot. You will later on see the two examples. One is under development for the Sedgwick County. But this one is really kind of aligned with the GFOA's principle that, supports this kind of rethinking budgeting initiative. And also, I think serves, to me, as two primary purpose. One is, we said, empowering residents' understanding. I think from now, I'll try to avoid educate the public. I would prefer to say, have a better way to communicate with the public, to allow them to have better understanding how the government is operating, right? So this one then also, because nowadays we know everyone is talking about data-driven, evidence-based, right? Given the advancement of technology, we do have much better ways to collect data. So then this is also an initiative that you can foster collaboration. I think collaboration is also another key. Collaboration can go public, private, public, and public. And when I say public and public, can be to government, can be public, I mean government and the private citizens, right? So then you have a snapshot of that. Then I will say this is not, I would say this is not something brand new. It happened a couple of years ago. Some of the pioneers, even including some cities in Kansas, have already used this. I came across this one. It's actually Lawrence, Kansas, and POCO even highlight their effort of using budget simulation because they think they can, I think it's Lawrence start with they call the PBB, priority-based budgeting. And then they find the budget simulation is really helping them to achieve that goal. So later on, I'll show you, you can see here, that's still the want to. Now I'll show you. So currently, this is the third year Lawrence is using budget simulation. To better prepare for this project. By the way, this project is not only from WSU. I also collaborate with a professor at University of Kansas, Zach Moore, who is also expert in budgeting finance. So we do this together. We even pay a trip to Lawrence, talk with their budget director and assistant city manager to share with us their experience, how they kind of gradually developed that into today's format. Currently, they went live back in February or early March, so now it's not live. But the one I'm showing you, this is actually, that's a made-up name, More City. There's no such, I don't think there's such city exists. Just for the experimental purpose, you can see that even that's the educator license. So they graciously agreed with us to use their data. We try to do some experiments, have some kind of treatment, control those type of things to help us better design the simulation tool for the Sedgwick County. So the good thing about this one, so once you get into this, you can see two things. There's one, you are in deficit, right? So that's kind of like give you a warning. And then you will say there's an impact on median value home. That one can be a little bit confusing, but the thing is, whenever you go to, thank you, to click that I symbol, you will see more information. You can explain things here, increasing by 1 mil or by a half mil or quarter mil. What does that impact a median value home in your jurisdiction? So that is how that one is calculated. Then you can see, try to make the budget. I mean, everyone knows budget is complicated, but the simulation is try to make it simpler, but still let the public to know how complicated it is. The situation is we have a deficit. We all know state and local government needs to pass the balanced budget. So this one is allow the citizen to, okay, here, this is kind of set up. I need to make hard choices now, right? I can start with the spending side. So this is how Lawrence categorized their, functional area, or this perfectly aligned with their strategic planning. So we can go here. Thank you. So for example, when we click that safe and secure, right? Then you have the subcategories. And then what Lawrence did is they kind of like formulate this into five level of service levels. And then, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then by default, they can say, oh, not necessarily by default, but they can say, okay, currently we're at level 3. You can also say currently I'm level 2, depending on the service level of that particular function, right? And then allow the citizen say, okay, I think this one to me is really important. I want to increase that. I want to increase to level 4, but I really need to know what does that mean, right? So then you can go there and click that. So then we need the more details. So now the details will show you this is what those 5 levels of service mean to this particular sub-function. Okay, and then you can see the highlight part is this is the current level. Okay, so if you want to move up to level 4, those are the things that you can expect. Okay, or you say vice versa, saying that, oh, I don't think this one is particularly important. I think we are good. I can bear with lowering that a little bit. But then you also need to be aware what is the consequences there. So the consequences will be the service level will be affected. And moreover, please close this. The thing is, once you make that choices, there's a dollar amount attached to that, because all we know, if you want to enhance the service to level 4, we need more budget. And then you can see once we choose that, your deficit will be larger. Okay, so then you can go over all the categories and then really trigger them to think about, okay, here is the financial situation. And here is, if I'm the budget officer, or I'm the decision maker for the local government, this is kind of my preference. So this is why we say this tool can help us to get citizens' preference, how they choose when they facing hard choices. Oh, you say we can go to the extreme. I like to see high quality public services. I also realize we have the deficit. There's another side of the equation I can do is I can go to the revenue side. So once you go to the revenue side, because here, the tool will allow you say, okay, you can only adjust certain type of revenue. Move to the revenue side. Yeah. Yeah, so for example, if you click taxes, you can see all others, they kind of lock that. So they only allow you to adjust the property tax, because property tax definitely is always the concern for the public, for the citizens, right? So here you can say, okay, I can increase or decrease property tax. And you can click that I symbol again. That will show you what does that mean? Change the property tax rate in increment of a certain amount. And then the good thing is not only will change whether you have the deficit, whether you balance, or whether you have a surplus, pay attention to that. Another one there, they will show what is the impact on the median value house. It's not impact on their house value, but it's kind of like it's a median value house, how much you need to pay the property tax. So I think we discussed the reason we said Lawrence case is something we want to do eventually, not this year yet, because you can imagine when we talk about all those functional departments, when they try to label, okay, this is level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, level 5, and then also need to, okay, if I need to reach level 4, what kind of resources I need? And also there's another question trigger there is, given I have the resources, those are the expectations set, and I need to achieve that. So that's why we say this one will have, it's not only to help a jurisdiction or local government to have a better way to get the citizens' input to show their preference, their priority when they are making, when they are facing the hard choice, like everyone in this room are facing. But also help us internally thinking about how we can make our budget process better and how we can really thinking about an overall picture of how much we cost to deliver certain level of services. So that's kind of the, so I think this is the beauty of this. This is the reason I kind of love this case. As I said, Lawrence took 3 years to reach this point. Initially, because you can see they, if you notice when you do the revenue adjustment, there's only just the plus and the minus sign there. You just increase the amount. But on the spending, you do have those scenario setting, right? And if you look at other simulations, I mean, they have a variety of ways to do this. I mean, they can also simply saying spending, just move up and down, and then instead of creating those scenarios. So this is kind of, I'll show you, this is the Lawrence case. And so we decided to launch this one at Sedgwick County. So here, and then you can go back to the slide. Quickly move to. Okay, so this will be our plan of doing things. Currently, we're at the stage still preparing for the, I call that back-end preparation. We have a sketch, kind of a draft to show you today. So the plan to launch the simulation will be on May 5th. And we'll allow the simulation to run for 3 weeks, just right before the Memorial Weekend. I think that's kind of perfectly aligned with the budget timeline here, the calendar. And then after that, I will do the post simulation analysis and present to you the results again in early June. And then more important for me is also, I think it's also important for you, is not only to get how the citizens are looking for those things, and then later on we can compare their preference versus our recommended budget, our adopted budget, which kind of gave us, as I said, this is a step-by-step process. So I can better prepare us next year round to do things. So now I'll show you the progress we are making so far of our simulation. So once you have that link, this is the first thing that will pop up. Tom, do you want to play that video? So basically, that's an introduction video. Tom shot a very nice video talking about why we're doing this.
I think it's important to watch the video. Let's play that so we can get a. That's a good video.
So once you finish the video, yeah, so
That's good.
yeah, and you can see it not continue yet. You have that helping tips. So that this helping tips will kind of give you a brief guide how to do the budget simulation. I kind of explained the Lawrence case. So because imagine you first open this simulator, if you have some knowledge, you know, okay, this is the thing I want to adjust, but you want to have some instructions. So here they have the instruction here. They will show you there's two ways you can adjust: spending side and the revenue side. So next. Yeah, and then tell you this is a category, there's a subcategory. Those are the things you can move around, you can choose, and where you can see the more information you need to help you to make the decision. Yeah. And then it will show you this deficit or surplus. Then you have to be in balance, or let's say have surplus before you can submit. If it's still in deficit, you cannot submit. That's the thing. And then next. Yeah, this is kind of, show you where I kind of jump ahead already, show you where to click that I symbol to get more information for particular items. So then you can submit. Okay, so see, this is something you'll see, it's a little bit different from the Lawrence one, because Lawrence one, I said, it's kind of, we remove everything, try to do the experiment thing. This is also another neat feature of that is before you jump into the whole picture, we can choose some items to highlight. They call the guided tour, right? So basically the first one we choose will show you the taxes, especially the property tax, and you can read what is the information there. And then the next item we choose is public safety. I think later on we'll insert a video here. So again, this is the at the draft stage. So the good thing is you can make an adjustment here already, right? But after those two highlighted items, if you can scroll down and then they will continue, then they will have the overall picture here. So I want to show you one thing is if you can just select one of the category. So the current setup is try to be as consistent as possible on your budget book. The way it's set up, the order of those department under each of the division. So then under each of the department, you can see there's the eye there. So once you click the eye, not this one yet, just after that dollar amount. Yeah. So this one will show the mission statement of this department.
Good.
And when you click more details, will give you, this is one I just retrieved from the 2025 adopted budget, because I don't think that will change. So this will be the overview. Then you can see, mission statement again, what is the strategic goal, those highlights. So you will have those information. And then when you try to make adjustments, so you remember Lawrence has 5 levels, right? Because this is our first year. It's kind of like we don't have that much information time to do that level of simulation yet. So instead, we're doing just 3 levels. The kind of by default is requested level. Then enhanced level and reduced level is kind of very wild assumption. Enhanced is 2% up, reduced is 2% down. It will help me to collect all those. We do have some brief information. What does that mean for a department if we say 2% increase or 2% decrease? So that's kind of the on the spending side. And then on the revenue side, the only thing we allow to do is the current property tax. So I kind of changed the parameter a little bit last night. So the increment will be 1/8 of a mil. So this is kind of my rationale after getting the email from Lee. She said she played with that. She sees there's still a small amount of deficit. She's asking whether this tool will allow me to submit. I know that by default, if we check you have to submit a balanced one, there's no leeway to do that unless you want to loosen that, which I really strongly against that. So, but the thing is, this is the reason why I want to adjust the increment of the revenue increase so that you will see, oh, okay, I really want to have that level of service, but I really don't want to jump the property tax that much. So this one kind of allow them very small amount of increment. And you can also see once you click the more information, kind of explain that, okay, so it's by clicking plus or minus adjustment is half quarter of mil, which means the dollar amount. And then if you can see that only affect you by $4 or $8, depending on how many clicks you. So kind of give you the flexibility you can adjust the property tax. It's not like, the spending side, it's nice to set up the scenario, right? You can see more information there, but the revenue side, if we still have that kind of become a little bit rigid because maybe I'm waiting to increase a little, the property tax, but I really don't want to increase too much, right? I can stand with very small increment, but not that much. So that's kind of the purpose of that. So another thing is once you hover on those, the donut pie charts or the whatever that chart is, you can see the amount of that revenue sources. So basically where the money goes, where you get the money. So those are the, another thing is, Nico, can you put that taxes? Down to the bottom, you can also put your suggestion there. That's good. The same applies to the spending side, right? So the suggestions, the current setup is you can type in your ideas. You may have a dollar amount attached to that. You're more than welcome to provide it, but this will not affect the overall balance of the simulation. So this is the current setup. You can see on the spending side, we also have that. I think I kind of explained everything so far. So again, this is still at the work in progress. We're waiting for some more video clips, more description about their enhanced level, reduced level. Once we input everything in, we definitely will, have several rounds of double checking, and before we can launch that to the public on May 5th.
And I do just want to clarify for commissioners that this is county tax funds.
Oh, yeah.
Not fire district. It's not ComCare revenue fund. It's literally what you all have the ability to influence through the property tax rate and what services are funded through that whole general set of funding, so that there's much, so it looks like a much smaller budget than what you really have, but it's really intended to get to what people want to pay for with their property tax.
So, and I see that. Just a question, this is just thinking out loud. Is it possible to find a way to show all $590 million somehow to where they actually see our entire budget. So if we're not answering questions as to, and I get $200 million is property taxes, but I also saw sales taxes on there and intergovernmental. I mean, is there, or maybe it's a
That's all what
disclaimer?
goes into the property tax fund grouping.
Right.
But to your point, Chairman, I think there's a way on the front end of this that we can educate as to exactly what they're looking at. And I agree that they need to see the full 560 million or whatever it's going to be for 2026. But then carve them back to the exercise at hand. Yeah.
Well, but bear in mind, so one thing is this is the requested budget. So it doesn't yet include any of the pay. It's not the recommended budget and it's not going to be the recommended budget. You're trying to get feedback much earlier in the process than you typically do.
Right.
So that it can shape your recommended budget. So it's not going to have your capital improvement projects yet. It's not going to have your technology projects yet. It's not going to have those pay pools. This is literally to understand what services are most essential, where people would like to see their dollars go if they want to have an increase in service or reduction. So I think I don't know the answer to your question, if it's possible within the simulation or if it's just something that we make sure we are really effective at messaging. Maybe.
Okay, so from the examples I have seen from other jurisdictions, let's just take Lawrence. They actually only show general fund. We can, I mean, I made something, we'll tweak the language later. So before you submit, under the submit, there's a text box. You can explain those things. You can say, okay, here the budget, I mean, thank you for doing this, but this is, be aware it's only a part of the whole budget. This is why the number you see does not equal to the media is talking about. Yes.
Hey, thank you very much for going through this. You know, we used a budget simulator the entire time I was on the Wichita City Council. And one of the issues we used to get, just hypothetical, like you get a lot of insiders that are pointing people toward it and kind of skewing the data. I'm not saying this happened, but like sometimes it was maybe fire or police spouses that 40 of them are getting in there and, you know, police pay and fire pay and plumber pay and whatever. There just a lot of things happen behind the scenes. And do you have any idea how we can kind of ferret out some of that?
Okay, I think because the purpose of this tool is to make it more attractive for the citizens to participate. So we, on the back end, will not do anything to prohibit anyone from participating. But what we can do is when we do the analysis, we can pay attention to their IP and also the time they spend on the simulation. I can give us some kind of a clue on that, but I cannot guarantee that we can, you know, because any way of inputting, you always have some kind of a skill. I think with one thing is we can discuss that. How about one person just, you know, enter 100 times, right? For example, then we can see the same IP. Maybe they will have a short, you know, period of time. I mean, unless that person is super smart, I mean, really want to play with the system, change the location of an IP and spend time. I mean, there's no way to prevent that from happening.
I guess the way we did it to city is once you get the data, you've got to have a little bit of a human element to it and kind of, you know, see is there really a public outcry over this or is this more internal?
Can we show the exit questions too, to maybe help Commissioner Blubo's the exit questions that they'll do?
The exit questions.
And
Oh, okay.
that might help alleviate some of.
Exit questions, it will be, yeah, here is the exit questions. Yeah, so basically you have two opportunities. Before you start the simulation, it will pop up, that's the entry question, but we try to minimize the number of that because we don't want to burden them too much. But after that, we can provide this sheet, right? Yesterday I was thinking because after we design all those, another thing is try to encourage people to take this. I just happened to be at a joint workshop between May City and May School District yesterday. They also have a survey. So they said if you complete all the exit questions, those demographic information, which we can identify, especially email, right? And then, you have the opportunity to get maybe 100 gift card, things like that, which we can discuss later.
If they don't fill this out. Can't see.
No, this one is, they already submitted.
Citizen have to fill that out.
The exit is they already submitted, but they will not, they don't know. They may have this impression they have to fill in this, but it's actually they already submit. And then this is the exit question.
Additional.
The one that you cannot start the simulation, that's the entry question. But I don't want to burden them, just give them 10 questions before even get into the simulation. But this is kind of, after the simulation, now they can start to fill in. Yeah.
If I may jump in and answer your question, sir, there are 3 required questions, and that's what he's referring to at the start. And so once you finish the simulation, you don't have to answer the other ones, but you can still submit with the required ones answered, which is, are you a resident? What's your property owner? And then what's your zip code? Those are the only 3 required questions that we have.
The top, actually, the way they set up is if you skip the entry question, those are the 3 required entry questions. If you skip the entry questions, they will automatically show again at the exit question. Then that becomes required.
The red asterisk was not next. That's probably.
Yeah, this is one of their feature they call the drop-in feature, that once you gave the zip code, it will just show the on the map where it is. Yeah. Thank you.
Sure.
Just on that page right there, the question on mortgage payments, is that understood that's monthly, yearly?
Percentage of spent. We
Last
can
question there on that list.
change that.
I just want to be clear, is it monthly
Sure.
or yearly? Just make sure it's understood.
No matter it's monthly or yearly, we're talking about the percentage.
And it's fine either way. I just want to clarify when you ask the
Okay.
question, what are we talking about? A couple of other questions. In other cities that they've used this tool, what kind of participation rates have we had in other communities? that have-
Lawrence, I don't know this year. When I talked to them last year, they said they kind of opened 2 rounds, so they can all in total they got over 500.
Okay.
Yeah.
In how many years have they done that to get to the 500?
They didn't talk about the previous year's participation rate, so I know this is the 3rd year.
Okay.
Yeah, I know this is the 3rd year.
A couple of other questions on that revenue. On one of the pages, you showed kind of a revenue side. You can adjust the levy by 1/8 of a mil increments. On that page or around that page, I think it'd be really interesting to, I guess, to define. I'm not sure how you would do it exactly, but what revenue neutral rate would be required to get. In other words, if you wanted to say an RNR, revenue neutral rate, what level of adjustment in the mill levy would be required to get to that? And I think it'd be information for them, because this is, and I think another thing we could talk about is, in light of legislation that did not pass, but we know it's out there, it might be nice to see, if you will, like a percent of increase or decrease in the total dollars. If it's say it's a 4% increase over last year, or whatever the number would be, if you adjust the mill levy, there's ought to be some data that's automatically calculated on the dollars. How much dollars increase to the county we would see, and what percentage changes that year over year. That type of data would be very important for, say a legislator wanted to get on here and look at this. They could then see themselves what would have to be required to get to RNR or to adjust the mill levy to get to those numbers. And I just think having some calculations to show, if you change it by, say, 1/8 of a mil up or down, or 1/2 a mil up or down, here's the consequence of that. Here's how the tax dollars change. Here's the percent change. year over year. Does that, and then maybe a target, say to hit R&R, you've got to change it by this much. And there's a way to add some information windows to that. So as you adjust that number up and down, you can see some results in not just the dollars, but some other components to the discussion, which has been very much in the news recently.
So, this is set up, it's a software that we buy. WSU actually bought, we did not. So it's not necessarily, I think, as fluid to do all of the calculations that you're talking about. I also, one of the things I would have a concern about is this is our actual requested budget. And so to then set up different scenarios in terms of just the revenue side, what I think we could do is in that informational box about current property taxes, we could say you would have to reduce it by X many mils in order to reach the revenue replacement or the revenue neutral rate, so that they could have the control to do that. And so would that be an acceptable alternative for that one?
It could even be static data. And if you could add some information, here's what I would like to see is, CPI, assessed value change year over year. And then what would have to be the amount of dollars cut or CPI, mill levy cut to get to R&R. And then again, if it was static information, just kind of show those numbers would be, they could twiddle the plus or minus there to get whatever they want to see. But I think having that data on the sheet would be.
Well, and as you're talking about this, I'm wondering, Nicole, we have that budget process page. I wonder if we could, where you had that link to the my local taxes, I wonder if we could put another link and maybe add some information to what you're speaking about, and even maybe some scenarios or things that could go more in depth. I'm afraid the more text here, the less likely people are to read it. But maybe if we can give them a resource guide to go and look to, and we could give them that additional context for those folks who maybe are more sophisticated. Would that be something you would maybe consider?
Just to do it somehow. Again, the calculations are as simple as can be once you understand how it all relates. It could be an Excel spreadsheet that just, you change one thing, you can see the consequence of that one change on every other number, and having some reference points on there, in terms of like R&R and, dollars increased or decreased in the property tax fund or whatever. That would be very simple to do that. I just don't know where it needs to reside. I have some, and just mentally, just seems like that'd be, for those people that do understand the relationship between those different ideas, giving them a tool to go and input those pieces of data would be really helpful.
Can I just respond to that? I think here is we try to strike a balance between, because I think sometimes we need to thinking that if I put in others' shoes, right? People in this room, we kind of know a lot of inside information. We know all those things. So this is why I said to try to strike the balance is we want this to serve its purpose, send the information, but also do not deter people from participating. Because, my concern is, as a citizen, if I'm not in this field, it may just make me so confused that will prevent me to make a good decision in the first place, or say, I don't want to participate in it. I was reading my financial management class discussion assignment yesterday. I kind of realized, a lot of those students saying the same thing, because the topic issue is about financial reporting. I see Travis there. The students say, yeah, I totally agree, because they don't know. We kind of sometimes, I think this is kind of a dilemma here, is we sometimes think, oh, citizens don't know this. We need to tell them, we need to communicate with them. And sometimes when we kind of build in the assumption, oh yeah, they should have already known this. So that's why I said we would try to strike the balance. I think the idea exactly the idea I had when I see this, I'm thinking, is there any way we can build in a revenue neutral rate thing, that kind of setup scenario? But the reason I kind of gave up is kind of going through those thought process. But I think the more information tab will help you to kind of fully disclose that, and then also try to give them link for them to take a look. And I thought another thing is, I think I should not say that each level of local government, but we do have a lot of tax unit, right? I think one of the questions since I moved here is always like, yeah, we're complaining about tax, but common citizen is really taking local government as a whole. But then every county, city, school district, they all try to separate. I said, well, no, wait a minute. You are talking about county, we're only 25%. Right? And then I don't want to get into the blaming games, right? So, but the thing is, there's another information we try to convey is that's why I said, we later on tweak the language before below the submit. So it's one thing is we show here, this is just a part of the budget, not the whole budget yet. And also, just remind citizen again, this is, we're particularly talking about the county government, not all the government altogether, not all overall your local government property tax burden.
That was actually one of my next question. I want to make sure when they go into this, it's explained to them on the front end. This is one of your taxing jurisdictions. We're not speaking to anybody else's taxing budgets or whatever. And
exactly, because if you see that impact,
right,
that calculation is taking, I just checked that it's 250,500. That's assuming a median value home. And then I use is the mill rate of Sedgwick County. So that number shows that amount paid just to the county government, not to the other jurisdiction.
if you click on the I next to that, does it explain that?
Yes.
Median value? It does.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Very good. That was one of my questions, actually. As people get into this and they open this up initially, do we have a list of presumptions that these numbers are, I guess that two questions. If someone doesn't make any changes as they go into it, is it showing a balanced budget as they get started? Or is it imbalanced as they get started? So, whatever
It is
presumption you
set
make.
to the requested budget and that forecast that you saw in February, which has the $5.3 million deficit in the general fund. And that's what they're trying to resolve.
Okay. And then
So this is, after the intro video, after the guided tour, this is the page you will see. And they will see that deficit there. When they make adjustment up and down, they will affect that number. Once it becomes green, that means balance or have a small surplus.
so as it's presented to them with a $5.3 million deficit, they need to understand somewhere this includes a 5% increase on average of people's taxes. So I don't know where that's clarified, that as you're getting started, you have an imbalance, but it already includes a 5% increase in their tax liability to Sedgwick County. Is it shown somewhere what their change in taxes will be if they just leave? They have to solve the $5.3 million deficit, but if they find a way to solve that is it understood somewhere that this includes a 5% increase in their tax liability?
I don't think we have that stipulated right now, but that's another thing we can add in there, just like the R&R language.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Good point.
I think that needs to be added to it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they get done, is there any way to produce a report of the changes that they requested? So I know if they submit it, I don't know, do they have something they can say, here's what I did? I know we receive the data once they submit this. The question is, if they wanted to show recommended changes that they're advocating for, is that like a report form that they could download that or save that for themselves, or that on Facebook if they wanted to? I mean, what would do that? What's their takeaway from this tool? Do they have a way that they can capture their recommended changes?
Lee here, because I think Lee kind of complete she didn't. Once you submit, you will have, I think, a screenshot of your preference, how you choose things. I need to double check on that. I will not give you the definitive answer now, but I think they have the feature is this is yours and compared to the average has been taken. But that one cannot be real-time update. You know, it's kind of like because like, for example, you and I just do this all together, right? All I see is mine compared with yesterday's average. Does not include today's. That's one thing. I think that's the feature, but I need to double check.
Okay. All right. Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
Thank you.
If we kind of go back through the drill downs again, like, public services, cultural rec, I'm just trying to, it's not very often that we solicit feedback for things. I always feel like, it's public safety and roads and stuff like that. I don't feel like we solicit a lot from services. And I'm trying to understand, is the public going to know what that engages? Because I think a lot of times the public, really doesn't know, oh, that's the county or the city, or so trying to make sure they better understand how they rate that and what exactly is involved there. Yeah, like cultural or something like that. Just trying to understand, okay, what all is, yeah.
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 So, I mean, current setup is we just have a one big suggestion box at the end of spending, but actually you can insert under every category. You can, and then you can, and also the I information can help you to get those additional information. So.
And then one thing they did at the city, and you may have said this, generally they would do like a live town hall or some kind of event just to, maybe from 2 to 4 and have some council members, commissioners in there just to try to get more attention and drive more people to try to fill it out, to do Facebook Live or something like that. Seemed like we did some stuff, tried to make some people about it.
Yeah, we can look at any of that. This is just, I think it's wise for us as we go into budget to think of a number of ways to engage the public. I don't want us to think we're relying only on this survey, but ideas like that or other types of meetings or CAB presentations, whatever, those are all good ideas. We should probably employ all of those. This was just to represent one facet of that.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, this is now the kind of sole source of seeking public input. And if I can say, everyone in this room will have, to some extent, some responsibility to encourage people to take this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. David, thank you. I think this is a good tool. I'm trying to get my head around this historically with our budgeting process. My experience has been that I think we have a pretty solid budget timeline and execution. I got a couple things to just comment on. I know Commissioner Howell has done a wonderful job of advocating for budget input, to the dismay of saying, I never get budget input. And you probably are on the forefront of. So we don't have a lot of public engagement, but I can go back in time and think, we'll get this large budget, and then maybe a whole or a half of a budget meeting might be individualized on. It's no secret. Then one year it was like the senior centers, such a small fraction of that department, let alone the whole budget. And it kind of echoes what Commissioner Blueball is saying. A small, loud group can try to influence us in our budget process today. I think we do a really good job of having the departments come in with their budget packages, or what do we call them? We call them the budget decision packages. Yes. And it allows us to digest that pretty well. Thinking of those things, I don't see how citizens would watch all that, let alone go into this and make their opinion known. They can have it, but I think we have to know historically to balance, and then last year, I think at the end of the budget, we added in a couple of things for, very, very minor $10,000 things, tens of thousands into $500 million budget. So I do like in previous recent years, we knew that employee compensation was high on our priority list. We knew that staffing was high on our list. And so we kind of attacked those over the last few years to get that done. And so I really value, I don't even know who leads that, but our finance and management team helps us understand what our priorities are. And it's not easy. And so I think this is a great tool to let the public know as we get questions, hey, you can go to this and do whatever you want to do. Again, going historically with what I said at the beginning with Commissioner Howe's efforts publicly to try to educate and request, and he can't get any input. I don't know how much input we'll have other than what I go back to, and I don't want to repeat myself, what Commissioner Blueball was saying about we got to be cautious of those loud voices as we've seen physically, and now maybe we'll see electronically. I'm not against this at all. I think it's great to say, hey, we have this tool, go ahead and have at it and approach it in that revenue neutral rate. I don't think the public 99% don't know what R&R is. So in any event, at the end of our budget process, just going my notes real quick, I've always liked the fact that Lindsay's group gets up there at the end. We've kind of done a budget manipulator, but it's been on an Excel spreadsheet where we say, hey, we'd like 100,000 off this, and boom, here it is. And what's the impact on mill levy? So we internally do a little bit of this anyway, which this has been another good for me because it just gets my mind to say, yeah, okay, this is I like what we do here historically, and I know that Commissioner Wise and Blueball will witness that this first time through and then they can make their own decisions and judgment on that. So I don't really have any questions as much as I just wanted to kind of share that.
Thank you.
And so I'm not against it. I'm for it as a tool, unless the cost is. David, you don't have to hear this in case the cost is.
I think, okay, what is that saying? Rome has not been built overnight, right? So as we said, I think this is the good thing is because I'm also kind of doing some research on the public engagement in the budget process, right? We kind of saying that we know the importance of that. We talk about the timing of that, right? And then, again, just try to echo back to my kind of at the very beginning and saying, how early is early, right? Because I kind of addressed one of your comments saying that if you take this as when I talk about the 4 stages of the budget process, preparation, approval, implementation, and evaluation, they're kind of like a circle, right? So it's this year we kind of, I would say kind of early, but not that early enough. This is why we say it can be multiple year, because we can take whatever lessons we learned this year. And then because when we go to the evaluation stage, that can be actually the starting point for the next cycle. So I see this one as, it's not to replace whatever you have now, right? But it's just try to find an alternative way to enhance and to improve. That's the purpose of this. Not saying that you radically replace everything you've done. No intention of doing that.
Real quick, thank you. I'm really excited about this tool and getting constituents to participate and really understand some of the pressures that we're, I will be feeling this year, but that's felt every year as this budget's worked on. I was going to see if, we're showing a $5.3 million deficit just right out the chute. Now there's some explanation and some understanding behind why that deficit's there. And I wanted to just ask Lindsay to explain that. And then if there's a way that we can better educate again why we're showing this deficit and that it's not because of mismanagement or lack thereof, planning and everything. But can you just speak to that? And then maybe we can integrate it in somehow along with the R&R language, maybe?
Sure. So you're right. A lot of what we see in the county's financial forecast is what we really think is going to happen. It's a tool to show us what's really going to happen. And oftentimes when you see deficits in the general fund, or especially in those special revenue funds, we have talked about strategically drawing down fund balance. And the commission has a policy that speaks to when we can go into deficit mode, which is basically when you spend that fund balance, and that's on one-time projects. So if we're going to do a lot of technology projects, or if we're going to do some significant capital improvement projects, it's perfectly permissible to have a deficit, because we don't want to just keep growing our fund balance year after year after year after year. We want to keep that at a reasonable, defendable level so that we're not overtaxing citizens. So we do have some of that. What I think this really adds value to is you all are going to be asked through your decision packages to add, 20 staff to 911. Or to have those conversations that EMS has been talking with you about, where their call volume is up and they've told you that they plan to come and ask for more ambulances. So what we want this to be is a tool for the public to understand this is true. I mean, this is the enormity of county government. You get 40 plus departments from your property tax supported funds. Did you even know, first of all, that you got 40 plus departments? I think to your point, Commissioner Lubaugh, you know what you're buying. Then to see that very small incremental change to your tax bill, because yes, even if you do cut your tax rate at Sedgwick County, we're 25% of the puzzle. So you're going to be able to see in this impact on median value home, the maybe more negligible impact, but then conversely, the major impact that it's going to have on your operating budget and this deficit. If you truly want to go in and add positions to 911, you're going to grow your deficit, and then you do have to solve for that. It's not just the one-time projects anymore. Now you're baking in recurring costs that has to be resolved. So there's a lot of moving parts. It is complicated. I think this gives insight to citizens of how complicated your job is, what you're trying to resolve every year, and then how once you start adding those things in, how it changes the dynamic. Even though $5.3 million is fine in the general fund for one time, once you start adding in those people costs or other things, that changes the narrative. So does that answer your question fully? Okay.
Okay, I just got a question, and then really two questions. One, I think I heard an answer earlier, but I wanted this is software we're buying, or is this custom code where you're building out?
This is software we buy.
Okay, software. So we're very limited in what we can and cannot do in regards. So we're buying a template with software, and we have plugins we can place, but this isn't custom code, correct?
This is not customer code.
Okay, so we're pretty limited. The second thing is, my understanding, right, that we're going to roll out some sort of a generic this year. I really enjoyed looking at the level of service tiers. Who's putting those things in there? Is that the department heads that are putting those in? And okay.
Lorian, who's in the very back of the room, because she's very, very smart, has been, and her analysts have been working with departments to understand what that 2% swing either way would do. And so we've been passing that information along. They still have a few more days before we absolutely have to get that over, but that comes to the budget analyst. It goes to Nicole, I think, for some review and cleanup, and then it gets passed to Dr. Gua for the actual load into. And so you'll see some of those do actually already have little blue eyes for those. Folks have already provided information.
Well,
and so we've been able to plug that in.
When I begin to think, one of the big things that we do here for about a month is we do decision packages, and that would be, those would be the levels of service that would be top levels of service and incremental. I'm just curious how customizable we plan on getting in future years, not this year, in future years, of how those decision packages are determining the levels of service on those tiers.
So that's going to have to be a conversation we have. I think we initially had a version of this that was loaded with decision packages. But the complication becomes if everybody doesn't submit a decision package, or if you have 6 or 7 decision packages and you're using a software that you're buying, how do you pick which ones to feature? Do you put them all out there? And so I think, yes, eventually we would love to get to a point where we can be way more specific about the budget. But one of the other concerns we're going to have, because we're doing this in the process or so early in the process, is we also don't want to surprise commissioners by putting information out publicly that you haven't even heard about yet.
We're going to hear them pretty quick.
You are, but it'll be running concurrent when this goes out. And so that's one of the things we never want to put you all in a position where there's information that's out to the public on here's what you could fund and you haven't had a chance to hear about it yet. And so that's going to be one of the things we have to think about in the future in terms of timing is our timing of making you aware of things, because we never want to surprise you.
Totally get it. And I'm kind of curious about the back end of this is, I mean, these are imports, right? You can load these things on a spreadsheet and import that information. I mean,
some I can, but some I need to do item by item adjustment.
Okay.
Yeah. So one of the things, one of the reasons I like this tool is because I see the benefit both externally and internally to a government, because this is a great tool to engage the public, but also according to when we talk with the Lawrence budget director and their assistant city manager, this is also a way help them to better link the strategic planning with the budget process. Yeah, wow. So that's we say we kind of have, this is the starting point for Sedgwick County. Okay, track back. Even the first version of Lawrence, they actually didn't use the current year budget. They used the previous year's budget number, which is not very ideal situation to start with. So I think we are already a little bit ahead if you're thinking about that. But the very good thing is once we have the strategic plan. So this is where I said how early is early, right? This is why I kind of talk about those 4 stages, because this year we can start as the preparation, right? But for next year, the starting point can be at the evaluation. Once we have the strategic planning, we can plan ahead even early. Then we can have more getting closer to the level we see there.
Okay. Well, 2 comments. One is we're getting ready to do these decision packages, and this is a very lengthy process that we go through. There's times I try to send links to these videos over to constituents to let them know if there's a way, and let's not solve this today, but I'd love to be involved in the conversation of how we put these levels of service, how we characterize those based on the decision packages these departments are coming and saying, this is what exceptional level of service looks like. And to where you can just send them to the tool and say, yeah. So I don't know what that looks like. I don't think any of us really understand fully what could or couldn't be there, but I'd like to sync that as much as I can to what we're hearing live in the room with what they're seeing represented on a tool like this with levels of service. I got other questions, but I think they're more common. So but I'm excited about this in a lot of ways. I think this does bring a level of transparency and encouragement and education. I would, top of my head, without really delving into this, I don't think I would advise that we use this as a real true sample survey. Like we're taking responses from this and trying to guide that as a representative survey of our community. I don't know, number one, if we're going to have enough sample size, but number 2, it's a sample size that's diversified and random enough to give us a real, I don't know. For for me, I believe this would be useful for engagement, transparency, education, not to advise us of a survey that the community feels about the budget. I don't see us getting to that level of randomness and of a real sample survey that can guide us in that regard, because you get a lot of outliers that are coming in, as Commissioner Blueball had mentioned. So.
Yeah, as I said, I just want to reiterate, right? It's not try to replace any other tools, just kind of like, additional way to enhance.
Yep. I was agreeing with you and adding some extra context as to why it needs to be viewed as exactly as you said and nothing else.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's all I got. Any other questions or comments? This is really good. Great work here.
Thank you.
That's all we got. Anything else?
Thank you, Dave. Thank you. Yeah, I'm Very glad to. And I think this is really gave me the opportunity to really connect what I've been researching on to kind of like a real life implementation of something, and which will help me back to think about how to, improve the research along those lines.
It's really good.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate the work. Excited to see it continue to develop. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. That's all we got. See everybody tomorrow morning.